thing many of us get confused about in frugal living is we confuse living frugally with living in poverty. And in this video, I'm going to share some key differences between the two, help us understand how we can make better frugal choices, and how we can help either ourselves or our community or our world improve the lives of everyone. Hola a todos. En este video les voy a compartir algunas diferencias entre vivir en la pobreza y la vida frugal. Number one, where is Waldo? This is all about context. In order for each of us to understand our personal relationship both to poverty and to frugal living, we need to understand where we are. Where are you in the world? In fact, as we get started here, I would love to ask you, where are you watching from? What country are you watching from? I know we have people here from all over the world, and where we live in the world says a lot about what our choices are with regard to frugal living and what we may be left with in terms of poverty. I live in the United States. I have also lived in other countries. If you want to know a little bit more about my background, watch my Spanish language video, which I'm going to link up above and in the description. If you don't speak Spanish, that's okay. I made English subtitles, and I'd love to have you go and watch that video. We each know our surroundings. We know what is available to us, what we have difficulty getting, what needs we have difficulty supplying, what choices we have regarding living frugally. And we sometimes look at other countries and think, well, they have it better or they have it worse, and we compare ourselves sort of generally. Sometimes we think of these comparisons as unhelpful, but certainly if we look globally, there are rich nations and there are poor nations, and it's important to understand the context in which you live, because how frugal you can live often depends on how much you have access to and how many choices you have. If we live in places where there are relatively few resources available to us, we will most likely be living in poverty because we won't be able to supply our basic needs. The World Health Organization, along with some other international organizations, identified that if a person has food, water, clothing, and shelter, they can live to see another day, assuming no additional catastrophes. However, this does not help us to get from day to day to day and string together a life. This is just basic survival. But if we look at the context where we live and identify how many people are struggling to obtain those four basic needs so that they can live to see another day, that gives us an idea of how many people around us are living in a truly life-threatening state of poverty. But above that, it's possible for people to have just barely enough food to survive. They have shelter that's not really adequate, but it keeps most of the rain off. They have clothing that may not be in good condition, but it covers them sort of. They have sort of enough water to keep them alive, even though they may get sick. Folks who live in those situations can live for days, weeks, months, years. They can live an entire lifetime that way. Lifetimes may be difficult, and they may be quite a bit shorter than the lifetimes of people who have ample supplies of those four elements. If we have very few resources, or no resources in some cases, then those frugal living choices are much more difficult and possibly impossible. Number two, consider social provisions, or what in my country we call a safety net. When we look around ourselves and our surroundings, think about what happens to us if we become ill and can't work. What happens to the youngest of us who are not yet old enough to work. Think about what happens to our seniors who are retired and no longer working. And then consider folks who cannot work for other reasons. Many of us who are women over 50 have spent at least part of our lives working without pay to make sure everything in the family keeps going. What kind of social safety net is available for us? Others of us have struggled with health problems and been unable to work. What kind of social safety net is available for each of these cases? I'll give you an example from my country, the United States. Many, if not most of us, are about one health emergency away from absolute financial catastrophe. This is because in my country, while we have world-class healthcare, access to healthcare is extremely limited to certain kinds of people who have certain kinds of health insurance through certain kinds of jobs. Certainly, we have new provisions that have come about in the last 15 years that help, but they are still very much tied to employment or to the ability to pay. Another example is much more basic, is the question of access to clean water. In many parts of the world, access to clean water is a constant struggle. And even in my country, in the United States, there are entire cities, entire communities that have very little access to clean water. In some places where we have access to clean water, that water is nevertheless being drained from our water tables at a rate much faster than we are replenishing it. And so we have a different sort of water access issues. And each country, each community provides social safety nets in a slightly different way and for slightly different people. Those people who are left out of the social safety net structure often live in poverty. And when we live in a situation where our social safety net, our ability to take care of our basic needs, even when we can't work, is compromised, then we are more likely to live in true poverty. As we move on to number 3, I'd love to invite you to give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and join the Frugal Over 50 community. Now let's go on to number 3. Inequalities. Anytime that we have a society with a strong caste or class structure, we are dealing with inequalities. The United States, again, can give us a very visible example because we're one of the world's largest economies and one of the world's largest countries. And we have a hyper-capitalist economy in which we have a very few billionaires who make decisions that affect the lives of all of us. And when there are inequalities, it means that certain kinds of people lack access to certain resources that help them to get out of poverty. Another example from my country, the United States, is racial inequality. I am a middle-aged, middle-class white woman, and I earn less than a middle-aged, middle-class white man. But for every dollar that I earn, a middle-aged, middle-class Latina woman earns 57 cents. There's no excuse for this to be the case. I don't want it to be the case. My Latina friends don't want it to be the case, but here we are. Now, these kinds of problems sort of shift around in different countries. Your country may have something else where inequalities exist at certain levels, and you can see them and you think, yeah, of course those people are poor, or of course I'm poor. There's so much inequality that how could we escape that? We need to change the system. Related to this is number 4, income. And I'd like to give an example that I tried to give in a video several months ago, and I really messed it up. And I want to thank Kathy, our commenter, who really helped me to understand exactly what the concepts were and how to explain them better. I'm going to give it a try, and you folks tell me down below if I got it. I want to talk to you about the boots theory. The late Sir Terry Pratchett was an English author who wrote a series of fantasy novels. One of these novels featured a protagonist named Sam Vimes. Now, Sam Vimes tells about the boots theory. Let's say you need a pair of boots. Winter's coming, you gotta walk around your city. All you have is $10 for those boots. You buy a $10 pair of boots. Is that a good quality pair of boots? Not really. Now let's say on the other hand that you have $50 to buy a pair of boots. You go and you get yourself a really good quality pair of $50 boots. Compare these two situations at the end of 10 years. The person who had $50 at the beginning and had it available to spend on one pair of boots could make that pair of boots last for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, they have spent $50 and their feet have been warm and dry the whole time. The person who could only afford to spend $10 on a pair of boots had to spend $10 every year for 10 years because those $10 boots, they're not going to last longer than about a year. At the end of 10 years, they have spent $100 and their feet have been cold and wet most of the time. These are radically different life situations and they come down to our income. How much do we have coming in tells how much we can send out. And those of us who are interested in frugal living are very attuned to this relationship between our income and our outgo. And if we think about poverty in this very granular way, if you just don't have the income and nobody around you is giving any sort of help in the form of thrifted goods or a social safety net or anything coming in, you're stuck with that $10 pair of boots. $50? So cheap for a rich person. It is so cheap for a rich person to spend $50 and spend 10 years in those comfortable boots. And if they wanted to spend another $50 next year, they could, but they don't have to because their feet are still warm and dry. Related to this, all of these seem to be related, is opportunity. What opportunity did you have this morning to easily access clean water and a good solid breakfast and a way to get to work or to get an income if you're not working? What opportunity did you have to be comfortable in a home that surrounds you and that gives you a sense of peace and joy? What opportunity do you have to move forward in a career that you may be in? What opportunity do you have to live frugally with the income that you have because there are abundant resources and you can really look around and get the best price on a variety of things that will really make your life better and keep you going? And I have an opportunity question for you. When did you have an opportunity to move forward that seemed like it really moved your life in the direction that it is going right now? Number 6, let's talk about frugal living as a choice. And I want to communicate to you that I know that just because I make frugal choices and you make frugal choices and we all make frugal choices, I know that doesn't mean that we are solving poverty. I know that doesn't mean that we are giving people access to everything that they need. I know that we are taking tiny, immeasurable steps toward making the world a better place. Those of us who are here watching probably have many choices in our lives, and we can make choices that make our own lives more frugal, and we can make choices that help other people live better. If you are a person who needs help and you come to these frugal living channels and think, how can this be for me? The way it is for you is that you reach out to find the help that may be there. And often the people helping are also in need. And we all come together and make things better a little bit at a time. And where we can't make it better right now, we comfort each other and we come together and acknowledge the truth that we are not alone and we are better together. Wherever you are on your frugal living journey, I want you to know that I am so proud of you and you are not alone. As a kid, I loved this song. I like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony. And I still have that fantasy. I'd love for us all to live together in perfect harmony with enough resources to get through not just till the next day, but for the rest of our lives. I hope that together we can make that a reality. I'll see you in the next video. Nos vemos pronto. Bye!